Okay. Bonjour, I'm Patricia BEAUSOLEIL. I'm the head of the Environment and Design Department in the Peclers Paris Trend Forecast Agency. And I'm with you today in the French Design Gallery. And very happy to be in this special sitting thanks to the Maison Pierre Frey, because they offer us to redecorate this space with their furniture. So I'm seated in a very nice sofa created by David Rafoul and Nicolas Moussalem. And behind myself there is a paravent, a screen created by Sam Baron, who was with us this morning for the first talk of the day. So I want to explain a little bit the purpose of this talk. First of all, it's a part of Équipe Hôtel Week, l'ameublement français and the French design organized from November 16 to November 20, Recevoir à la Française, virtual meetings and experiences. It's a series of digital events to encourage business exchanges and inspirational events and inspirational meetings. To give you more detail about the French design was created 40 years ago, supported by the Ministry of Industry in France, and is contributing to help to promote the innovation in architecture, in furniture, and in interior design. The French design support companies in their creative transformation and by incubating projects and contribute, of course, to their promotion. They develop an exhibition, conferences, as we are doing today, strong digital presence, and help French brand to grow and to expand. The talk of this afternoon will be about the hospitality, and more precisely to exchange about the large question, how to rethink the core values of hospitality industry. I think it's a big topic. And Jean-Paul Bass is the CEO of the French Design, is unfortunately not with us today, but he wanted to deliver some message. He wanted to share with you a special message. So I'm talking under his name, sorry. So the COVID epidemic is also a proof of the essential shift toward a sustainable world. The New Deal might include less travel, but maybe slower, with deeper experiences in places that make sense, in accordance with their environment. So many changes to come, full of opportunities for new hosting concepts. So to participate into this talk, I'm pleased to introduce a panel of talent, creator, experts. First of all, I'm honored to introduce Jeffree Beers, architect and founder and CEO of Jeffree Beers International. Hi, Jeffree. If you can talk a little bit about yourself and your work, please.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Merci. Bonjour. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this wonderful panel discussion. My name is Jeffree Beers. I'm an architect and a designer and an artist whose my work is distinctive in that we bring what I'd like to call emotion to modernism. I studied architecture at the Rhode Island School of Design. I was in the architecture department, but also became very involved in the glass department. This is where I met the famous glass artist Dale Chihuly, who was head of the glass program. So I ended up being not only an architect, but a fine arts major in glass blowing. It shaped my career for forever from then on. I was then awarded a Fulbright Fellowship, and I traveled to Brazil to study with the legendary architect Oscar Niemeyer. When I returned to New York, I was lucky enough to begin a tenure for also the architect I.M. Pei. I spent 10 years with him designing hotels all over the world, especially in Southeast Asia. These masters really defined my vision and the dynamic use of space. I'd like to think subtle, sort of elegant use of material and kind of a tailored quality to the work of my firm. In 1986, I established my company, Jeffree Beers International, fondly known these days as JBI, where I bring my signature sensibility. I'm gonna share 4 just quick projects with you right now, just while they might describe a little bit what my work really is all about. Based in New York with here, let's just try and I guess it won't go. So stop sharing. Oh, here we go.
Yes, that's okay. We can
see that. Sorry,
yes,
guys. Little,
perfect.
My colleague Victoria is helping me here, but this is we're based in New York City. We're in Lower Manhattan, but we have a global reach. Jeffree Beers International is a full-service design studio. We specialize in architecture, design, and planning, from local hospitality to resort hotel properties, to restaurants, to residential, as well as offices. We pair the precision of architecture with the sensuality of form. And again, sort of the ethos of my firm is bringing great emotion to the idea of modernism. You can see in this slide, this is one of our signature styles. It's a recent office for Jay-Z here in the Chelsea district of Manhattan. His Rock Nation offices here in New York. This is Atlantis Sanya Resort in China. It's the 3rd Atlantis property, 1,300 room resort with 17 restaurants and various other entertainment venues. We designed the entire property. This is in Boston. This is a 3-tower development called Echelon Seaport. It is for a Cottonwood development company based in LA. We designed it very much as a hotel, lots of guest amenities, and a wonderful project. Finally, you can see here, it's an upcoming a major luxury hotel located in Costa Rica in Papagayo Bay. We're very excited about this project. It's under construction now and will open in about a year. I hope you can see really from our signature style in these projects, Jay-Z's offices in Atlantis and Echelon, in an upcoming luxury resort. The custom fixtures, sensitivity to the texture and color of materials, and an elegant proportion are really what defines the work of my firm. Our team is an astute, skillful, and collaborative group. We are a very collaborative studio environment made up of architects, interior designers, graphic designers, lighting designers, very, very talented. I'm blessed with a group of people to work with. We're grounded in 35 years of experience. Our designs balance discipline with spontaneity, and we blend modernism with the warmth of artisanal techniques. And I think this creative dialogue really is, again, sort of the ethos of JBI, where, again, we bring architecture and artistry together. And that's kind of my story.
Super. Thank you, Jeffree.
Sure.
I'm pleased to introduce also Chef Josiah Citrine. He's a 2-star Michelin chef in CITRIN and Melis. And if you can tell us a little bit more about you, Josiah.
Yes. So I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I started cooking in 1986, in which year I moved to Paris, and I lived in Paris for 3 years, working in different restaurants. Training, I came back to Los Angeles in 1990 and worked at Chinois, Maine with Wolfgang Puck. And then I worked at another well-known European chef, Joachim Splichal, at Patina. Then I went on my own and opened, became a chef at a restaurant called Jackson's, which was about a 2-year life. And from there, I opened with my childhood best friend, Raphael Lunetta, Giraffe Restaurant in 1996, which was great. And I left there in 1999 to open Melis. And so I opened Melis in 1999. And then in 2008, we were awarded 2 Michelin stars when the Michelin guides first came to Los Angeles. We had Best Restaurant Zagat. We had, for 9 years running, we had 5 Mogul stars or 5 Forbes stars now. And then along the way, I've opened multiple restaurants and I consult in multiple projects. So in 2015, I opened Charcoal Venice, which is an all-grill restaurant where 90% of all the food comes off the charcoal grills, even from the Midnight Margarita, which is a margarita that's a black margarita with charcoal in it, which I believe is banned in New York now. I do that. And then I have another steakhouse called Dear John's, which was a revival of a restaurant that was opened by Frank Sinatra's private chef in 1962 in Culver City, which has been a great success. I also run all the food and beverage at the Line Hotel in Koreatown with the Seidel Group. And that's about it. And in March of 2019, right about 20 years, I closed Melis Restaurant. And I remodeled it all. So I gutted it and completely redid it. And that's where we came up with the CITRIN Melis. So changing with the times, I took 70% of the restaurant and made it into a little bit more casual, not as high-end as Melis was, put a huge bar in. It was 22 seats at the bar, and the dining room was a little more casual, a little more close together, obviously, than it was when it was a fine dining restaurant. And then I took about 35% of the restaurant, and I put a kitchen in that room and 5 tables, and that became Melis. And that had a separate entrance, and we were obviously trying to get 3 stars in that restaurant, doing a very limited amount of people, and having a special set menu every day, and a really experience of a very homely experience, but in a very elegant way. And we opened that in December of 2019, and obviously we closed on March 14th. That's pretty much my life in a nutshell. So it's 5 restaurants I run right now, and all of them are operating on patios.
Perfect. Impressive. I'm really pleased to have with me in the studio Lina GHOTMEH, architect and founder of Lina GHOTMEH-ARCHITECTURE. So thank you to be there with me.
Thank you, Patricia. It's heartwarming to be together as humans. That's good.
That's good. And
yes, to
introduce yourself, of course.
Thank you. So I'm Lina GHOTMEH. So I run my office, my studio in Paris, Lina GHOTMEH-ARCHITECTURE. And it's since 2006 that I started my practice. I grew up in Beirut, so I was born in Beirut and grew up there before establishing my practice in Paris and moving to France now almost 20 years ago. So growing up in Beirut was such an experience for me because it's a city that had been really changing all the time. It lived the war, but was also an open archaeology. So I've seen the city moving and changing in terms of cityscape, archaeology, and this relation with the ground was very strong, and with nature as well. So I was very sensitive to the notion of history, of narration, but also materiality, earth. So it's something that I brought into the way of making architecture, but also bringing that into the methodology of work. Because when we're talking about archaeology, we're talking about digging, about researching, creating, or discovering a story. So every project is like a discovery rather than something that I impose on the context itself. And before establishing my practice, I worked with Ateliers Jean Nouvel in Paris, and I also worked with Foster and Partners in London. And I established my first practice with a museum. So it's a competition that I won. We can see that in the next pages on the screen. I think we can scroll through the presentation. Yeah. Just we put some selection of works. So that's really jumping into the practice with this 34,000 square meters museum in Estonia. And today we're working a lot about sustainable buildings, like how to build in wood, and this is a project around sustainable feeding. Projects in hotels, like this hotel in the vineyards in Lebanon, and how to create an immersive experience of the experience with the wines, and also moving to projects in Beirut, like this tower that really falls with the relation with the ground, and trying to reinvent a certain materiality, bringing nature into the edifices. This is a project for Hermès. We're doing their atelier for all the manufacture of leather works. So also building a very low passive building, low impact building. So it will be the first atelier that will be low in consumption, low in carbon. So my work also moves in scales from architecture into interior and object design, so a little bit crossing between architecture and art. This is a restaurant where we designed all the furniture and the fixtures. It's in Palais de Tokyo in Paris, so it's like Les Grands Verts, so really doing all the furniture in wood, moving to Japan to an installation in Okura Heritage Hotel. I love to travel. Of course, it's good now. I'm reducing my carbon footprint, but it's discovering all the cultures. We're keeping on with these international projects, like even with this situation, by having local partners and developing these. And then we moved to some interior also for like a chocolate maker here. I really love also to kind of cross architecture with craft and work with artisans, with people that are very close to the hand. I love the idea of glass making. Jeffree was like talking about that, so how to bring into different scales of knowledge and broaden the architecture field with this kind of multidisciplinary approach.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
We have the pleasure also to have with us Randy Guillo. Randy Guillo is design principal, co-global health and wellness practice area leader for Gensler in Chicago. Hi, Randy. Can you introduce
I can. Bonjour.
a bit more? Bonjour.
Such beautiful work, Lina. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So my name is Randy Guillo. I am an architect and fellow with the American Institute of Architects with about 30 years of design experience in many building types. And like Jeffree, I just learned, got my start at the Rhode Island School of Design, where I also took glass blowing, which it was an amazing experience, which completely shaped my outlook on things. And I wish I had gone to school for glass blowing when it was all over. But we'll talk offline about that.
Yes,
so,
I would like that.
So my current focus is global health and wellness practice leader for Gensler. And I'm thrilled to be joined by my partner, Tom Ito, who I hope has some slides because my Wi-Fi went down, so I'm on my phone. So we'll figure that out when we come to it. But so Gensler is the world's largest sort of pure architecture and design firm. We have about 6,000 people worldwide in 50 offices. We're a multidisciplinary group of designers, and our work's informed by our design research, as well as our 24 practice areas of focus. And we operate across these practice areas, which I think is why I'm here as a healthcare design leader to talk to you about hospitality. That's my theory anyway. And I think, my outsider perspective might be valuable today due to the kind of collapsing nature of life and activities. The hospital as we've known it, with the exception of like really the sickest of the sick, has largely become embedded in our live, work, and play kind of continuum, right? So personalization and digital health is ubiquitous now and sort of able to be monitored and personalized in all areas of our lives. So you're just as likely to receive care in your neighborhood clinic, an office, a hotel, a retail superstore, or as of late, right here on our phone, right? So my theory is that this matters to you because the opportunity to kind of embed health and wellness into the hospitality industry has never been more available than it is right now at this moment in our time. And I suppose with the global economy somewhere around $5 trillion in the wellness side and around $9 trillion around health and wellness, there is tremendous opportunity to create new models of hospitality and of wellness. So I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you, Randy. So we've got also with us Tom Ito, hospitality leader and principal of Gensler Los Angeles. Hi, Tom. Nice to have you on board. Can you talk about you a little bit?
Great, great. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see your screen.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad to be here, happy to be here, honored to be around this panel. And as Randy mentioned, we're partners, and even more so now because of the close association with health and wellness and well-being in the hotels. So I think there's a close connection. We've been talking a lot. We've been learning a lot from each other about how to influence that, because that's such a big concern with everybody when they go to hotels these days. So a little bit about myself. So I launched our hospitality practice back in the late 1990s when we renovated the Beverly Hills Hotel, and we wanted to reposition it to everyone thought, you know, it should be, because it wasn't at that time. And I've been working on global hotel projects all around the world ever since. As Randy mentioned, you know, I serve as the global hospitality leader for the firm to link our 10 regions across the globe with 50 offices with the United Vision and how we're taking our practice forward. So some of the work here, let's see here. Okay. So as I mentioned, we are a global firm. So this is a few examples of what we and I've been working on around the globe on both architecture, planning, interior design, and brand strategy. And it carries the gambit from a very small, unique hotel in Costa Rica called Surf Simply, where you can actually, the first purpose-built hotel based on learning how to surf. So, you know, how cool would that be to grab your friends and learn and be something new in a very small, intimate hotel, which engages both indoor and outdoor experiences. To the Waldorf Astoria, which is the new gateway project in Beverly Hills, where you can get on that rooftop, and rooftop bars are big. That's incredible. If you haven't been there, you need to go to the rooftop and see commanding views of Beverly Hills and out to the ocean. So we completed that a couple years ago. To a Four Seasons in Kuwait City, and you can see the influence of the cultural influence of the Middle East with the Mishrabiyah and all that integrated into the facade of the building, and taking that character of that for this beautiful Four Seasons. There's a trellis there, there's a pool sitting on top of that podium there, you can see. To a Grand Hyatt in Incheon in Seoul, where we were the architecture and interior design, and we were inspired by the sea and the oyster shell. You can see kind of what that hard shell is and the beauty of the oyster inside. So it's taking those cultural influences that we like to embed in our projects to make them unique and special. And you know, this was part of the Grand Hyatt in Incheon. To a project that we just opened recently in Hotel San Luis Obispo. It's really sustainable, a lot of indoor-outdoor spaces, which is really key right now. To a project in Nashville, where we take the local culture and put all the colors in the spirit, the eclectic spirit of Nashville, into the interiors of the Kimpton in Nashville. To a project that we're doing in Sri Lanka, which is a hotel residential project right now on the shores there, and you can see that beautiful sky bridge. There's a pool on top of there, so we're looking for those unique experiences. And the latest project that we're very excited about is the one on the top right, which is the Atelier hotels. And that's bringing, and I don't know, many of you maybe don't remember, but that was the first kind of interactive game. And we know e-gaming is really big, so we're looking at creating a whole new interactive experience, leveraging off Atari hotels, the nostalgia of that, which is unique in its own right, but actually moving forward to the spirit of what is the future of kind of that marriage between digital and physical in the interaction of e-gaming sports, because we know that is a huge deal. So those are some projects around the world. You know, our basic point of view is about hospitality, right? It's all about making those personal connections. Hotel is about human interactions, and we like to do designs that spark your inspiration. It's always about emotion, and it's always about those memorable experiences. Certainly today, it's different given where we are, because that human interaction is a little difficult when you wear a mask and you're socially distancing. But that's hopefully with the vaccination we'll get past that. But at the heart of it, isn't that what hotels are all about? And we're looking forward to really re-engaging, making that human connection. And we talked about getting those places that that make us inspired and love being in hotels. So we're looking forward to that day, and in the meantime, we are bearing with it as we move through. So that's me.
Thank you, Tom. And then we've got Romain Jouffre, General Manager of Atelier Jouffre. Good morning, Romain.
Good morning, everyone. Romain here in New York, Long Island City. I'm honored, of course, to be among all of you. It's an honor for me with our small company, Jouffre. I'm going to share my screen maybe to introduce the company.
Yes, please.
All right. Can you see the presentation here?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So obviously I'm French. I come from Lyon, where my dad, Charles, created the company in 1987. We are a company who specialized in upholstery, window treatment, but also wall upholstery and gainage. And we have workrooms in Lyon, of course, but also New York and Rabat in Morocco. We work mainly for residential projects, but from time to time we are lucky enough that we can work for high-end hotels around the world, and I will show you a few examples in a minute. As opposed to my father, I'm not an artisan myself. I was more studying in management and business. I did a business school in the city of Lyon, but there was an opportunity for me 6 years ago to come to New York and be in charge of the New York workroom. And the challenge was great. I accepted. I came here. At that time, the company was very small. There was only 4 people, 2 seamstresses, and an installer. And the company has been growing since then, and it's been an exciting adventure. And now we are 29 people in the US, serving some of the most talented interior designers in the city. I'm just going to move on. So as I just explained, we do a lot of high-end upholstery, all sorts of furnitures. We don't have a catalog. Everything we do is custom. And we start really from beginning with the design process, and we go all the way to the fabrication. Everything happening in-house in one of our workrooms. We also do a lot of window treatment, so anything that's linked to shears, drapes, Roman shades. The people in this department also are in charge of bed treatments, which we do a lot for hotels. We also do wall upholstery, so fabric stretched over the wall. It's something that we do on site, and it's a century-old technique that was kind of disappearing, but it's now back, and we had the chance. I'll show you a project that we did at the Baccarat Hotel here in New York using this technique. The last craftsmanship is called gainage. That's when you apply fabric or leather directly to the substrate, which can be just like on those pictures here, a sideboard, but also traditional paneling on the walls or anything like that. Quickly introducing our workshop. So the workshop in Lyon is made of 45 employees. We have a 7,000 square feet space in Villeurbanne, just next to Lyon. And that's, of course, our headquarters as well. We have the workshop here in New York, where we are now 29, as I said earlier, with 8 upholsterers and 5 seamstresses. So we do exactly the same work as our French colleague, but just for the American market. We work for a lot of designers who specialize in more residential projects. That's why I never had the chance to work with some of the architects, great architects that are with us today, but I wish it will happen in the future. Here are some of our clients in the US. As I said, mainly residential, but from time to time, they also work in hospitality. We work a lot with, for example, Alexandra Champalimo from Champalimo Design. Our European clients installed on site. It was a request from Gilles and Boissier in Paris.
A beautiful, beautiful application. Beautiful,
gorgeous.
Thank you, Jeffrey. This is the suite. And I just wanted to show you a few more projects that we've done, more residential, just to explain what we do. And on those pictures, we've done basically everything that is made of fabric. For Alberto Pinto, a project that we did last year, close to Marrakesh. And we can see also that this workshop that we have in Rabat, specialized in more like a Islamic type of decoration. A project that we are extremely proud about is the Grand Foyer of the Opéra Garnier in Paris that we renovated about 10 years ago. We did the decor here in Le Grand Foyer. And just a few more pictures, just so people can have an understanding of what we do. And yeah, I think that's it for me. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you,
to all of
Romain. It's a very impressive representation of creativity all around this table and this talk. So to go a little bit more deeply in the context of this talk, special context, considering the current pandemic, what is interesting to exchange today is how hotel and restaurant will have to imagine new curation experiences, to develop new concepts, a new model in order to reopen the discussion and the interest with their customer, and also attract a kind of new audience after the COVID situation. You will have to rethink the model in order to recover the audience and the customer. It's a matter of adaptability, it's a matter of agility, it's a matter of resilience also in a way. And you will be, of course, the designer, the creator, to recreate this good environment, propice environment to the future of this industry and to meet success again. And the first idea, because we are currently in this COVID situation, is this idea of this need of reinventing spaces and reinventing these experiential spaces and at the same time ensure the touchless experience to the customer, bringing confidence and experience at the same level, because people want to be reassured when they go, when they enter in an hotel or into a restaurant. So I think this first question is how to meet finally this new standard and the creativity in hotel. And Lina, I would like you to answer in a part of this question, of course.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because it's true that we, at the moment, we're living the situation of this COVID sanitary crisis, and it's meant to be temporary. So the whole question is whether this has a massive impact on the way we practice space, or should we take it into account, or shouldn't we take it into account? So it's a big question. But I think the learnings are interesting as well. It allows us to think that our spaces should be adaptable in a way, so we have to maximize the adaptability and mutability and capacity of mutability of our spaces. If we think about hotels, for example, we would think that we have to lessen the interactivity if we're in this COVID situation. But we can see that actually hotels have been also shifting towards more digital experiences, where you don't really need an interaction with the receptionist, that you would book your hotel and go immediately with your iPhone, just get into your room, you don't need a key. So that's already have been put in place without, before even having the COVID crisis. Would that mean that this kind of practice would be enhanced better and pushed more forward in the future, which allows in such a situation to really go to hotels, because you would want to change your daily routine and being in your home all the time. You can really go to that structure and just rent a room or a place, and without having this forced interaction with the administration of the place. It's also interesting to think of that experience that allows you in the counterpart to accentuate the public spaces or the interactive places. In that sense, the interactive places become so important in this crisis, because they are heightened places of experiences, while at some point you would be really isolated and practice the hotel as an individual without any need of being administered or followed. On the other hand, like public venues would have more spaces and would allow a heightened experience in that sense. So this situation at the moment maybe bring these reflections for me in the current spatial use and experience in the reception industry.
Super. Talking about this matter of care, health care and protection reinforced in the hospitality and in restaurant, I would like to ask the question to Randy, because it's a main part of your expertise also, this connection in between health demand, protection demand and hospitality. What, if anything, has been the impact of COVID on design and on hospitality spaces?
Right, right. Well, I agree with Lina in that our current situation is an accelerated version of where the industry was heading. You know, the sort of seamless interactions. Of course, we're calling them touchless and contactless now, but seamlessness was always something that was a trajectory in the industry. We have to be careful because the next step can't be soullessness, right?
Yes,
so
yes,
we have to make sure that those experiences are kept sacred. And I guess if I'm putting my health and wellness design lens on this conversation, I would say that, these two industries have been borrowing from each other, healthcare and hospitality, when it suits their needs for quite some time, right? So healthcare borrows from hospitality in creating concepts, front of house amenities, care concierges, valet parking, etc. And certainly hospitality has borrowed around sort of immersive health spas and hotels, based on restorative powers and healing and things of that nature. So it's been a relationship of convenience up to this point when it suits our needs. But because of where we are, I think, in the face of COVID-19, I mean, in the U.S. here, we were at 11 million infections, only 8 days after reaching 10 million infections. So we're in a tough spot right now. And why that matters is because the question of touchless experience, which should be rooted in science, is rooted in fear right now, right? And being able to convince our customers, be they healthcare or be they hospitality, that it's okay to come back, ultimately is what we're talking about. And my hope is that as we get through this as a conversation between the industries, that we both can learn something from each other, right? That the kind of metrics and efficacy of a healthcare approach can be proven out in a hospitality setting, and the extreme focus on experience, customer experience, can be brought to the healthcare setting during this time also.
Okay. So this, in fact, this reinforcement of care, this reinforcement of protection in hotel leads to a kind of new management of space. So how do you rethink the circulation in the space, in the staging? You was talking about the idea to be isolated in a way, and at the same time we need to reconnect to others. So how do you manage this kind of circulation of space and needs? I would like to ask the question to Tom and then to Jeffree to have their point of view about this new normality, in fact.
Yeah, great. Well, the notion of circulation, when we track the guest journey, it's how the interactions take place and who you interface with along your guest journey, particularly right now. And we did a pulse survey out to a number of respondents around the nation about what they're most concerned about. And what we learned, that people are most concerned, the biggest fear is other people. So being in spaces, because you can't control the behavior of others. So those spaces and the circulation spaces that have people, lots of people, are the ones that we want to try to avoid, unfortunately, for the interim. So this notion of the check-in procedure where you just go directly to your room and have that path of travel, I think is extremely important. So that also, in terms of staging, we think that it's going to be an evolution of adaptable spaces. I think Lina touched on that. So, in the interim, we have to deal with this social distancing thing, right? So spaces have to be, socially distanced. Occupancies are a lot less than they used to be. So that has a lot to do with staging and circulation. Now, when those things, when we get more comfortable about the vaccination and people will feel more comfortable being around larger groups of people, we're going to start to see those spaces emerge. So those spaces become even more flexible and adaptable. So we want to stage the design to allow for the maximum flexibility. The other thing in terms about staging, and we've heard and we know this already, and we've said it many times, is the integration of outdoor spaces. So the more that we can get outside, the more comfortable we feel, the more safer we feel. We know that being outside actually makes you feel better and it's actually healthier for you. So if we can create circulation spaces and stages that integrate indoor-outdoor, we're seeing a proliferation of that. And, certainly that has been increasing, particularly in places like LA, right? Everything's out. Well, actually, everywhere in the country, everybody's eating outdoors right now. I think that's going to continue to perpetuate. And when there are areas where you can't, or weather permitting, then you bring the outdoors in. So I think there's a notion of this connection to nature and how we stage that through the process as well. So I think it's an evolutionary type of thing. And I think the flexibility, again, is important. And again, I think in the interim, it's about not being around a lot of people. Unfortunately, that's what we're seeing right now.
Well, Tom, to follow up on that, I mean, I certainly agree with all of your thoughts on that. I will say I am extremely impressed with what's happened in New York. I lived in this city all my life. As I'm sure you all have experienced it's a dense, or a very urban, dense, intense, dynamic city, as many are, but New York especially is a very vertical one. The implementation of outdoor space that our mayor and governor and what happened throughout the summer in New York especially, I think has profoundly affected the restaurant industry and for that matter, the hotel industry in New York. I think that your comment about integrating outdoor space indoors is so valid. The whole experience as a New Yorker of being able to, it's Europe has come to New York, Amsterdam and Copenhagen and Paris for that matter. I mean, and the whole notion of eating outside in cafes and taking over streets and being outdoors has really reinvented and brought tremendous positivity in this terrible pandemic we're in this terrible circumstance we're all in. On the flip side of that, the whole way that New York has embraced, and other cities, of course, LA, I was just there last week and profoundly saw outdoor spaces. We've closed off streets. We've given restaurants more dining seats, to be honest, and more dining opportunities than they had previously. I have many instances now where rooftops are being activated. We are actively going into hotels and reinventing the outdoor rooftops. Actually, on a specific level, the focus is really on social distancing, but also being with people. I don't think we can. I mean, I'm of the belief that we are essentially, God help us, a vaccine, and these things will come, and we will all get through this, and I do believe that. But there are other, fundamental things of sort of respecting one's distance, maybe in the way of an Asian or Japan or certain other cultures there's a certain sort of respectfulness. But in hotels, we're turning ballrooms into dining rooms. We're reinventing spaces. We're reinventing conference areas that wouldn't otherwise be activated into dining rooms that are properly distanced and utilized in a much more thoughtful way. I think hoteliers are being, and restaurateurs, extremely thoughtful about how to take care. Hospitality at its heart, at the real essence of the word hospitality to me is really just, you know, taking care of your guests and making them feel safe and warm. So layouts are changing for us more in terms of not necessarily increasing numbers of seats or seat count or maximizing profits, but we're paying a lot more attention to how spaces can be more creatively and utilized in a thoughtful way. Something like that.
Say, Jeffrey, I wanted to key off something that you mentioned, and that's about the event spaces. And I think that's one of the major concerns, because that's where you have the proliferation of a lot of people, this thing about fearing other people. So I think that is one thing that in terms of staging is going to change in the future. And I think that's what everybody's kind of grappling on. What is a convention center? What's the meetings of the future going to be like? And the thought was that, you know, the $5,000 people event, maybe we're not sure that's going to happen in the near future. So it may be a combination of smaller spaces, smaller meeting rooms, with the ability to then morph into larger spaces, but also this notion of hybrid. So
and outdoor, and outdoor where possible.
Outdoor spaces, outdoor meetings, exactly, the conversion of those.
Greenhouse or architectural structures that are able to allow airflow and temperature control, but proper airflow. I think that is you know, something that really is at the heart of addressing. I agree with you, there may not be 5,000 people, but if there could be 5,000 people if properly divided and organized and space planned.
Right.
Something.
The other point that I was going to make, though, it could even be 10,000 people, because now we have learning now that events and conferences are taking place virtually, so that your audience is also just can be wider globally without having to travel. Right. So the notion of you can have spaces that, you know, engage the outdoor for those that are there, which would be really great and safe for the air circulation, but also digitally connected virtually. So this hybrid situation, I think we're going to see where technology is going to play a big role, particularly in those spaces, to connect while you're in a space, in a meeting, to be there if you're lucky enough to be or feel confident enough to be there personally, but then able to reach out. So this digital connection. So those spaces that we design, I think, are going to have to be staged accordingly, you know, moving forward.
I totally agree with that. And that's actually exciting, I think.
Yeah, I think so too, right?
I mean, you know, a lot of possibilities that for us as designers, but also operators and owners and developers. So.
Yes, it's definitely opening a new perspective. And in that context, going back to the main meaning, the original meaning of hospitality, I wanted to ask the question to the chef we have with us today, Josiah. Do this context inspire you new rituals related to gastronomy, or do you envision creative gastronomy in front of this new perspective and new context?
Well, I think that a lot of things that we did in the hospitality, and when you're trying to push the limits of experience, were table side. We had to do table side presentations. For if I'm understanding the question right. For example, at our place, Dear John's, the classic steakhouse Caesar salad made table side was like, we'd sell 90% of that would be sold. And in order to create that experience, we had a videographer come in and film the captain, who looks like he walked out of 1960, Hank, our server there, making the Caesar salad. And what we do is we present it to people on an iPad, basically, that they can watch this and still have that feeling of having that Caesar salad being prepared for them in front of them. So we've had to come up with new and different ways. certain things we haven't been able to really figure out yet, like, you know, for example, a cheese presentation. How do you do that? You have to have so we've had to come up with a lot of different kinds of diagrams, explanations on them, and all kinds of other ways to create still that experience that's above and beyond what, you know, is being given in other restaurants.
Good.
So everything's been thinking a little bit outside the box and what we can do. You know, so as we keep going through it, and I think as seasons come up and we come through different areas, we come up with different ideas as the times change of, at least from our restaurants, of things we would do that might have been more interactive guest presentations and different kind of experiences. We kind of come to those as they come up with the new seasons. A lot of it, we're just treading water as we change every day what we have to do to survive.
Okay. Going from this concept of care and protection to the needs and the reinforcement, the vital position we give to the social links, as you explained before, how can we amplify the aesthetic and the cultural dimension of the spaces to create more immersive and interactive experiences now? I would like to ask you the question, Lina. How is your vision of that reconnection? You already a little bit you start a little bit to explain that, but maybe go more deeply into that.
Yeah, I mean, thinking a bit like also out loud of what I've been hearing, I think in a way like we, like hospitality places, whether we're talking about restaurants or hotels, are for me immersive cultural experiences. They are not only spaces that we consume, they are places where we learn a lot of things as well. Talking about, for example, a restaurant and with a great chef with us here, it's really about a full endeavor of senses. We're talking about our senses of eating, of seeing, of learning, of touching. So it's a full kind of experience, and that's something that we will not it will not go away with our crisis at the moment. This is something that the crisis at the moment is actually an instigator to push that even further and to accentuate it with hybrid means, as also has been talked about. This is the capacity today of bringing the narration forward. Like, how would we narrate even like communicate on the capacity of a hotel to narrate its story better by you know, staging that in virtual space and talking about it and explaining it better. So it's a chance today, I think, to kind of bring the story and heighten the experience of spaces in a novel way, which is something to explore and to push forward in our practice of spaces today. And I think also talking about craft, like for example, we talked about upholstery, just juice, like
Romain.
Romain, Jouffre just explained to us all the knowledge and know-how, and this is something sometimes that we don't know about when we go to a hotel. And I'd like to really understand this story, and the digital experience allows us to understand that better. And this is what we're discovering today with our sanitary crisis, that we need this also other world that we have to live with that would complement our real world experience.
Yeah. So Romain, I think the question is also for you, because really your work is representative of this savoir-faire, this French savoir-faire, but you are more than French, it's international, it's a matter of know-how. How do you envision this cultural meaning on spaces and the way we can do a kind of storytelling around this know-how and this transmission to the customer when they enter in the place?
Yeah, my feeling is that people are, and you were explaining this earlier, the people are going to be looking for maybe some new experiences, something a little bit more custom, something a little bit more like with a home feeling. And I guess maybe there will be a trend to go into spaces that are a little bit less industrialized, if I may say so, with a little bit more custom creation, custom, of course, when it comes down to our company, a little bit more custom work in terms of upholstery or window treatment, but anything that would come into a hotel so that one room is very different from another one. You can have different experiences in different common area of the hotel. And then maybe, yeah, as you were explaining, maybe tell a story to the customer and the visitors about how this hotel has been designed by the architect, but also has been brought to life by all the artisans that participated, because it sounds like people are more interested, more and more interested in the process and understanding all of that, and not seeing just the global, like the overall picture, but also interested into going more into the details of each and every little items and homeware and part of the decoration.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like it's opening up a new dream world actually that complements nicely and more creating a heightened sense of experience in the world, in our current world. And thinking also about the notion of individuality and the fact that we are also more centered around ourselves at the moment because we are having lesser of social interaction. I'm kind of drawn to think that we are more into a meditative kind of a space. So maybe, and Tom Ito also talked about the Japanese or like the Asian way of making things. So maybe it's also something that will allow us to push forward this notion of meditative environment that we will live through in hospitality. Meditative because of its quality of craft, but also of relation with nature, because we really need this relationship with nature, with the outdoor coming in, the notion of ventilation. Jeffree talked about ventilation, and it brings us to bioclimatism. So we have to really think of architecture and our spaces in a very bioclimatic way, in the way they are ventilated naturally, and it's not only artificially climatized, so it also reduces our need of climatizing these spaces. So it's really interesting because it brings us to very basic issues that composed our primitive way also of making architecture and dealing with the spaces around us.
So in fact, when we are talking about rethinking the values of hospitality, is maybe rethinking and going back to the encourage of the hospitality meaning, and also the encourage of what is architecture, what is culture, in fact, or inner culture, definitely, and also to be ready to be open to the others. And in fact, everything is a matter of emotional moment and emotional feelings when you want to have these experiences. So going to this idea of being more emotional, activate this emotion to the customer, to the people coming into this restaurant or to this hotel. What are the creative interaction? You mentioned the idea of reconnect to nature or the ventilation, but how to stimulate, how to arouse the emotion through the space. And my question goes to Jeffree, and I would like to have your point of view. You already mentioned that, but if you can go a little bit more deeply into that point.
No, sure. Emotion is something that drives us all, and especially in these times. It's sort of why I use the word thoughtful design. I don't think I've ever thought about it so in front of me. The idea of I've always thought about the guest. The guest is always the client. I think, Tom, you and I, and we all, as designers and architects in hospitality, it's always the guest who is the client, and ultimately we're designing for the guest completely. In the case of, let's say, Jay-Z's office, that was an interesting example of, coincidentally enough, I think people, the notion of theater and people watching is something that we all are curious about. We're curious about each other. We're curious about the theater of that, the theater of a restaurant or any sort of public space. And I think we're very challenged now, obviously, in just the basic fact of distancing. In Jay-Z's office, we actually found an amazing Italian storefront system made by Lina that was a completely flush glazing metal, black anodized aluminum, but with flush glass, and allowed each office to be separated completely by a glass partition, which coincidentally enough, even though we planned it a year ago, it falls right into being so successful today, and that everybody has this sort of ability to people to watch each other. There's a theater about it. There's an invitingness about everyone feeling safe, but also in a theatrical kind of setting. It's really quite really well done. It was just recently published in Interior Design, and there's a photo in it that was just amazing. It captured this glazing system, and I reference that only in that the result is something that I think people feel emotionally aroused and excited, but yet safe at the same time.
Yeah, safe is also the point, and I would like to have your point of view also, Randy, about it.
Sure, and I'm struck by something Lina just said about, these properties are and opportunities are the chance not just to consume but to learn, and it's a short step from learning to healing, actually. And I think that this notion of creative activations. I mean, this product type that we're talking about here was some of the most creative early on in the pandemic, right? So when this whole thing started, I mean, Tom and I were looking at, hotel conversions into healthcare settings to take care of, sick people. And it was a fairly widespread phenomenon here in the country. And radical creativity is now playing out. We're seeing in our own design work where health systems are coming to us with hospitality partners saying, design us projects that serve us not just as 4- and 5-star guest and conference experiences, but allow our post-surgery patients to recover in the hotel also. So they're incredibly creative, and flexible product, if you will. But I guess to me, the question of emotion is still the most important thing, right? In this. So the emotion gives meaning and color and texture to our lives, and the experiences that touch us are the ones that have kind of a universality to them on the one hand, but on the other hand are remarkably personal. That may touch you in a multisensory environment or something like that. So they have real meaning. And I think there are ways to do that now. Certainly by expanding the focus of the visitor from the me to the we. I think one of the panelists just mentioned, a focus on nature. This idea of designing environmentally responsibly and allowing that personal connection, that true personal connection to a natural environment where you feel at one with the place that you're in, at the same time connected to a larger conversation about sustainability. It is an incredible and important opportunity right now, I think, also.
I wanted to chime in a little bit about this notion of emotional connection, because I visited I took a little staycation the other week and went to one of our projects that we worked up in Santa Barbara. And, emotional connections are connected to those special moments. And there are a lot of weddings taking place. So there's weddings, there's birthdays, there's anniversaries. And if you can recall the space that you're in, it's those emotional connections it's then that notion of interacting with other people. That's memorable. So for us, it's about how to heighten those experiences, how to make weddings special, how anniversaries even better than they were before so that they're memorable. And for us, it's about creating the backdrop to make those emotional connections happen, because you'll remember the space where you proposed to your wife maybe in that hotel, or where you got married. And those are the emotional connections that tie you back. So there's this notion, we did a study about what drives your great experience, and that there's three basic components. Is what you expect, does it meet your expectations or exceed it? How you interact, what is that interaction with guests or with other pieces that you interact with or things? And then for us, it's design and space. And those three those things come together really drives emotional connections.
I agree with that, Tom. I mean, even to the point where we talked earlier a little bit about indoor-outdoor connection and space relationships. The most memorable times for me, in reference to memorable moments, which I think resonate for all of us in any hotel we've ever visited or a place or a new city, it's the memories. It's the memories that are rooted in the emotions that I at least I remember. And it's always has to do with outdoor space. It's always about a cliff or an ocean or a stairway or a garden or an entrance or a proscenium into another space, and one leading to another, which I think landscape designers are on stage right now. I think that there's can be a tremendous amount of contribution in collaborating, architects, landscape design, exterior, interior space design, to create memorable spaces, to your point.
Hey, Jeff,
can I share if I could share a quick story, and I was going to save this for later, but I think it's relevant actually. I got a call a few days ago from a good friend who was a dean of an architecture school here in the United States, and she reached out to me and told me that one of her architecture students has a degenerative eye disease, and he's going blind, and he's going to be blind in a couple of years, but he wants to finish his architectural education. And she asked, and first of all, that's heartbreaking, right? I mean, but she asked if I could ask my design studio, what buildings or places should he go see before this happens, before he loses his sight? And so I polled the studio, and ultimately the answers were all answers. There were places like the Salk Institute, like Zumthor's Zumthor and Vals or Lots of Rex, places that have a multi-sensory experience around them, where you can feel, the cells of the monks on the floor with your bare feet, or smell the salt air of Salk Institute. Right. And so this idea of memory and experience are intimately tied together, and they and need to be considered, in a multi-sensory way. So I just wanted to share that.
Really
Talking about this idea of plurisensorial experience, I think it's also what we can expect in a gastronomy and in a culinary experience. So, Josiah, how do you stimulate, how do you amplify this idea of emotional interaction with the guest in his culinary experience when he go to meet your gastronomy?
Okay, so I mean, in this time of COVID, it's been really about the aura you carry almost. I mean, as I say, that we've taken the servers and we put them in masks and they have shields on. So, I mean, so much about it was the warmth when you greeted the table, the smile. So really you have to, we talk a lot about in our pre-shift meetings, which are meetings that we all have before we start service. It's really about those people that are representing us, because the food is represented first by when the captain, the waiter, the servers put it down and create the excitement on their face about the food and what we've created in the kitchen. It has to go to the dining room. And when they're covered up, it really has to come from their hearts, and they really have to feel this, because half the time, I don't know how many of you eat in a restaurant, you can barely hear what the waiter's saying anymore. When you have the mask, the shield, it's really difficult. So we really talk a lot about creating the aura and just being so, your whole body and your whole mindset being so much enthralled by what we're giving them and how 100% we are behind it. So it's really become a lot about just that whole feeling of that whole aura, the whole body just being warm and in love with what's happening, because we're so away from the smile, away from the facial expressions. I mean, I watched the sommelier talking about wine and going through it, and it's taken so much away from him. He can't share with them. They can't do the whole rituals that were there. So it's really comes down to the way we're being about it and the joy that we're trying to in our body movements more than anything right now. With the facial movements being gone, you don't see those smiles, you don't see that excitement as much in the facial experience. So a lot of it by the movements and just really upbeat, being very upbeat about what we're doing.
Does it have more to do with Randy's point about engaging more of the senses? So I know that when I go to a fine restaurant, like the visual thing is so wonderful to see, and the smells and the way things are presented. Are you finding that that's creating much more an emphasis because you can't see the server, but it's more about that experience?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, it's really about the food coming to the table. I mean, presentation is always important, but then imagine now we're all outside and our lighting is not exact, and it's
right.
It's not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we're relying on all these other situations. So, but I think people are getting it, and they're excited to be out, and they're excited to have the food. And I mean, the flavor has to be the best, right? And then I hate to say the challenges are there. I'm not sure the food is tasting as good right now because we can't taste the food in the kitchen like we used to. Take off the mask, taste the food. It becomes really hard. You know, there's been a lot of things that have really changed right now. But I think it's really about the presentation has to be beautiful. The flavor has to be there. I just think though that it's the care and the love that's being put into it. People notice that. People notice. I have a lot of more comments about the amount of love that's put into it now than I used to. Before it was the attention to detail was always what the guests would talk about. Now they really feel the love because it's hard to see all those things that we did before.
Yeah.
I think that is so right. It's feeling the love. It's feeling taken care of. I think the first thing that we all will sense is whether or not people are being thoughtful and taking care of us, whether that's a hotel, a restaurant, a public space. I think that's something that won't go away. I think that's something that shouldn't go away. I think that's the root of hospitality, even having a dinner party at one's home and inviting folks to one's home and making everyone feel welcome and safe.
It's interesting, Jeffrey, because it's also the essence of architecture, actually. It's the making things with love, actually, and really any space should be this notion of hospitality, and what we say in French, accueillant, is really like cocooning almost as a place. And thinking about actually gastronomy or food, restaurants, I think maybe it's also an occasion to work on the intimacy of the experience. Like if we remember, like if you've been of course, to Japan, all the restaurants, most of the restaurants are more about the intimate experience of eating, and you would find yourself with two persons only in an enclosed place. So there's a whole kind of a new, experience about it, which is very interesting. You're not anymore in this large restaurant, and you're really with the group of people that you're feeling safe with. There's a sense of respect between the different groups. So it's also, it's funny, it's like a kind of a whole cultural shift as well that is being brought forward with this, in this period of time.
Yeah, definitely this idea of being, feeling comfortable, reassured is also linked with this need of feel at home, even if you're not at home. Yeah. If you go to the restaurant, if you go in a place, in a hotel, this concept of feel at home is very important. It seems to be increased now. So that was definitely the last part of the question I wanted to exchange with you, the point about this comfort and feel home experience we can provide to the guest. How do you envision that? What is your creative perspective in front of this need?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like more it's about intimacy rather than home experience, because if I have to go to a hotel, I don't want to feel at home.
You
in
don't
a
want to
sense,
feel at
no.
home, but you want to feel safe.
I want to feel in a cocooning place.
comfortable.
Exactly. I want to feel like in cocooning place, in an intimate place, a place that respects human and the environment, but not definitely not at home, because going there is for me kind of a discovery. It's an experience. It's a new cultural venture. I want to discover new things. I want to learn a new, about new environment, about new crafts, and a new story. So it's an occasion to travel somewhere else, actually, but doesn't mean that I have to feel uncomfortable. I have to really feel comfortable. I have to really feel cocooned. Maybe the notion of home comes with the size of the. If we're talking about hotels, we're talking about rooms. Rooms should be reinvented today. It feels almost old-fashioned the way we experience hotel rooms. The notion of hotel for me is it's my dream project, because it's really bringing sensitivity, sensuality, notion of chez soi, like being at your place, materiality, culture, taste, full senses, and also really drawing the issues of our societies today. It's a place of intersection of so many things. So it's really a function that is needed to be reinvented today. What is a room, actually? What is it just a place where you sleep, or you can really create a space for other uses, and how to reinvent it? I had to do this exercise for an exhibition here in Paris, which was really interesting. Like, how can you give more space, actually, and really kind of put the bed and other functions in a different place? So it's a kind of interesting like topic to readdress today.
Yes, so how to recreate this idea of well-being and cocoon in these spaces. So, Jeffree, what is your vision about this concept of well-being, and reconnect with this intimacy even outside of your home?
Well, I certainly agree that a hotel is a place of exploration. I think we're all explorers and adventurers at heart, and home is home is home. And I think the notion that a hotel is returning to home, I don't see that. I do see more attention and guest attention, more hospitality. I see the minibar coming back in a big way. I think the minibar should be really curated extremely well, and thing. I think it's important. I think it was at one time in the hotel world, and back in the grand days of grand hotels. But I think it's very important, the memories and the way that you are greeted and the way you are, taken care of. I think that the future of hospitality design just lies extremely in celebrating each of us, in celebrating life and the precious things, the memorable things. You can still greet people. A greeting can happen in many different ways. And I think that you can be welcomed and explore a hotel. I mean, I personally think that, again, the ability of a hotel to sort of incorporate an outdoor or nature. Tom, I think you mentioned, or someone mentioned, bringing nature and green and the world around us inside and in a part of in the hospitality world is the future for me, and I think we need to seize the moment. I think there's a lot of I'd love to think that there'll be a lot of positivity and a lot of good things that will come from this very challenging thing we've been going through here. But
yes,
something like that.
Yeah, I also think that during this time, you know, and I agree with you, Lina, that we don't want to go to a hotel like you want to go home. You want to go because you want an elevated experience, right? Something new. But I think right now, during these times, people want to go to a hotel to get rejuvenated, to get re-engaged with things that they were disconnected with. This whole notion of personal resilience, and I think that's different, and that helps you get out of your mindset. It helps you learn new things, as you mentioned, and to experience new things. So although you want to feel comfortable, you want to go to hotel to either, you know, get re-energized, or to, particularly in this time, that's why I went away the other day too, because I just need it to get out of the house. We want to get out of the house, right? We want to be safe, but you know, so you want to feel comfortable. The other thing is that what we're seeing in terms of hotels and emergence of lifestyle, and there is still, when we go away, we know we like to disconnect, but oftentimes we don't disconnect, and we work, and we you know, enjoy, and we do leisure together. So the notion of making those spaces that adapt to our lifestyle, making sure that you have, you know, comfortable workspaces if you choose to do that. That's even better than your home, and connectivity and all that, so that you have all those conveniences that even better, because we're dealing with a lot of different things, certainly the rejuvenation, but the convergence of our lifestyle, kind of what we do. And a lot of it is, you know, we're just, the work and the lifestyle is converging. So I think that's something to consider. And of course, the food's the big issue too. You go to a hotel because you can get great food that you can't maybe cook at home, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Great chefs and great restaurants. So that's why I go to a lot of places too. And that elevated room service, another thing too, right? You have a whole, to your point about intimacy, you can create really great intimate spaces in your room, in your guest room, with the outdoor patio. And room service was like, well, I don't know, room service, but now we can actually make that an exclusive experience as well. So we're looking at how to make that in the guest room design, because we like to say that the guest room is your sanctuary, right? It's your sanctuary for space. Yeah. And so that's what we're looking at. That's kind of the new kind of evolution of how we're looking at design.
Exactly, and you can use that room in any manner or in many different ways than I think ever before. That you can do some yoga or exercise or expand physically. You can use the room physically. You can use it as a workspace. It can be a dining room. I think that is the challenge for us as hospitality designers.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's
well, I was going to say about the room service, I'm sorry, about the room service and the mini bars. I think that you will definitely see an advancement in that, because we've had to adapt so much as chefs with takeout, doing things that we never thought we'd do, like to-go cocktails. I'm sure when this is over, every mini bar will have craft cocktails in mason jars. All you need is pour it over ice. Food to go, we've adapted, and a lot of chefs that never thought we'd be doing takeout are doing lots of takeout. And I think that's going to it is definitely translated into some of the stuff I've started doing at the Line Hotel for the room service and to have cocktails available. So I definitely agree that those experiences are definitely going to be elevated from when you have a bag of chips to maybe having, you know, other kind of things inside that mini bar fridge. It'll be food you can take out and eat. Whether it's soba noodles with a broth you pour over it, there'll be lots of things that'll be in there that'll be great to enhance those in-room experiences.
Yeah, but
that sounds good. Broccoli pork.
Yeah.
No.
It forces completely the change also on the room structure. Like, you know, like when you get the food and you have this kind of squeezed space, how you completely change the room like layout, and how like have more space actually in the room itself, whether the standard room or the larger rooms that could be in a hotel. And I'm thinking also, when I'm hearing you also, Tom, is the notion of suspension of time, like being in a hotel room is almost being in a train. You have this notion of being in a suspended time, you know, where you can be very creative and you can work, you can write, you can really have this kind of suspended time that allows you to question your dailies. You have so it's a very precious space, both mentally and spatially, that we haven't explored its potential fully yet as a space itself.
So you mentioned
we learned that time is the most creative when you don't have all those things in your head.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes, you mentioned this dimension of blurring the time and space, in fact, when you are in this space, in this hotel room. We are also, you mentioned this idea of augmented experience or bespoke experience, something a little bit with an added vision of the lifestyle, in fact. Talking about the aesthetic activation or vision of that, for example, Romain, when you are thinking about plurisensoriality of materials or of even talking about colors, what is your reference about this conception of bespoke experience? Because you are working only in this purpose of bespoke experience, but also about having a connection in between materiality and plurisensoriality, about this connection of aesthetics and feelings.
Well, I think there's very much an affinity towards warmth and natural materials. I do. I think that certainly woods and materials that are comfortable and familiar, I think are something that, as opposed to cold and austere or stark, I think it folds into this period from an aesthetic standpoint.
So again, going back to the origin of the material, you were talking about the anchorage of architecture, the anchorage of the art de vivre and lifestyle, and in fact we close this story with this origin of materiality. When we are selecting fabrics or material, when you are creating furniture, Romain, what is the starting point of this selection? Can you a little bit share something about it?
Yeah, so for us, most of the time, it's really the architect and the designer who are really making this process of selecting the materials. What I can tell is we see a trend to go more into natural materials. Also, of course, we can see more and more than sustainability in the way we manufacture and the way the fabric are being produced is important. And I would say, yeah, we use more and more like solid wood and natural fibers to produce our upholstered pieces, for instance. And architects and interior designers are always asking us, whereas they would never ask us a few years ago, how is the sofa, for example, being produced? What kind of material do you use? Is it sustainable? Are you integrating this in this process, in your process? So of course we have to now, and I think it's what's going to happen more and more, I guess, also in hospitality, that people are going to start being very careful about that. As you said, they want something that is like kind of a cocoon, something very intimate and customized, maybe from one room to another, from one space to another, and using different materials that are more and more natural, I think is going to be the trend.
Yeah. So to conclude, we had a very interesting panel and discussion. You talked about emotion, you talked about plurisensoriality, about reconsidering space and intimacy. Among all these axes we talked about today, Jeffrey, what will be the priority for you, the priority to launch a new project to meet the future of hotel and meet the future of restaurant and then this industry, or to what is the priority for you to activate or to continue to follow currently?
Sure. I mean, that's That's a lovely question to ask, and a very deep question to ask. I've thought certainly my studio, we have all had lots of discussion on this, and I think that we can't get overwhelmed. I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed. I think we can all be the stress level, anxiety level, and sort of overwhelmed with it. I think that for us, it's really come down to again, I've said before, but it's this sense of not only empathy, and I don't mean that in a sorrow way, but thoughtfulness. That everything we do, from planning and space planning, from the porte cochere and how one enters a property, whether it's a hotel, a home, or a restaurant, how you move through the space, how you're greeted, thoughtfulness in terms of materiality and the warmth of materials, the lighting. I think lighting is tremendously important. And I guess it's really all about being strong emotionally and paying a lot more attention to each other as people who are using spaces and respectful of one another, and how that translates into design, and specifically hospitality design, but any kind of design, whether it's textiles or whether it's architecture or buildings or anything. I think it all has to do with how we sort of, it lies in celebrating. It lies in celebrating life and the beauty of life, celebrating beauty again, and really paying attention to not trends or design style, and that involves nature. I think it involves eyes wide open and looking at the horizon. And I don't mean to sound like well here, but I do mean that. I do really mean that. My firm we're really talking about how to be just much more thoughtful in every aspect of our design work, from planning to material selection to lighting, and of each other, something like that.
Super. So it will be the conclusion of this talk. Celebrate the beauty of life. I think it's a very nice challenge to catch. So thank you for all of you for your vision, for your expertise, for your talent. It was a real pleasure to have this time with you. Just to close this talk, I have to tell you that this talk will be visible in replay in the site of lefrenchdesign.org. So if you want to review the talk, please go to the site. And thanks again for all of you. It was a worldwide experience from Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, and Paris. So thank you for your time. Goodbye.
Thank you,
Patricia.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank
you.
This was
Pleasure
very
to meet you.
enjoyable. Lovely
Thanks.
experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
very
Nice
much.
to meet
Thank
you
you so
all.
much.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Be safe.
Have a great evening. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.